Hello, welcome to today's class. Yesterday we did ledger entries for overhead under and over absorbed. Here's the question number 12 that we're gonna do right now. What is the correct entry in the cost ledger to record the over absorption of production overhead? I told you over absorbed overheads are your income, okay, and they are credited in over absorbed account, and also they are credited in the profit and loss account, okay, because income is credited, okay. So what is the entry? What is the right entry? So if it is credited, so definitely in the production overhead account, the under absorbed is basically debited, right? For example, actual we take, I told you actual we take on the debit side, and absorbed overhead we take on the what we estimated on our actual activity level, and absorbed we take that on the credit side, right? For example, actual expense was 50,000, actual production overhead incurred were 50,000, and we actually absorbed 55,000. Where do you think this 5,000 would end up to be? In the debit side, right? In the debit side, and same, it will be credited, 5,000 will be credited to the over absorbed account. And if I'm going to transfer it to the profit and loss account, it's gonna go to the credit side of the profit and loss account. That's how it is an income. So what is the correct entry? In overabsorbed account, it is not debited, it is credited. It is credited in the overabsorbed account, credit, and it is debited in the production overhead account. The right answer is option C. Okay, here's another question. Question number 15. Production overheads are absorbed using predetermined rate per machine hour. Okay, overhead absorption basis is basically machine hours. So it is rate per machine hour. That is going to be overhead absorption rate per machine hour. It is going to be the actual machine hours in a period were less than the budget. Okay, actual machine hours were less than the budget. That means budgeted machine hours were more. Okay, what is the formula for standard overhead absorption rate? If on the basis of the machine hour, it's going to be total budgeted production overhead divided by total budgeted machine hours. Okay, and how actual overhead absorption rate would be calculated? It's going to be actual production overhead divided by actual machine hours, right? And what was the scenario? It says that actual machine hours in the period were less. Okay, for example, the cost was 50,000 and 5,000 were the budgeted machine hours. So what was the rate? Standard overhead absorption rate was 10 per machine hour. Okay, so if actual machine hours would be less, right? Listen very carefully. These kind of theoretical question can also test your knowledge. If they tell you that one activity level is less than the other, actual is less than the budget, or cost is less, actual cost is either more or less than the budget, and then you're asked to identify whether this situation will lead to under absorption or over absorption. And at times they also ask you about the accounting treatment and how that, what it is and how it's going to be treated in the income statement. Okay, if it under absorbed, it's going to be debited in the income statement. If that situation would lead to over absorbed overhead, it would be credited. So first we need to identify what's the situation here. So it says that if actual machine hours are less, right? What would happen to actual rate? Okay, that's the formula for the actual rate here. Actual production overhead divided by actual machine hours. For example, if total budgeted production overhead and actual production overhead are same, but the denominators, machine hours are not the same, right? I told you if any one of these factors is changing, it will have a different standard OER and actual OER, and it will cause under and over absorbed. And here, actual machine hours are less. Okay, what would happen if actual machine hours are less? Actual machine hours are less, my actual rate would be more. Don't you think so? If 50,000 was absorbing on 5,000 and the rate was 10, right? If now I'm decreasing the activity level, but the cost is same, so definitely uh, my actual rate per hour would be more than the budgeted rate. Okay, so what would happen what is my actual rate in this scenario? 50,000 divided by 4,500. This is a very important concept. I told you my actual rate would go up definitely because the activity level is reducing. It has got an inverse relationship. If this is decreasing, it will go up. If this will be more, like it's 5,500, if this is more, it will decrease because actual rate has an inverse relation with actual machine hours. However, here actual machine hours are less and budgeted machine hours are more. Budgeted machine hours are more than actual machine hours. What would happen in this scenario? In this case, actual OAR would be more than standard OAR. If actual OAR is more than the standard OAR, then definitely I would have charged 11.11 per machine hour, but I just charged 10. I actually charged less. I actually charged less on per unit. In every 1 unit, I charged 1.11 less, right? 1.11 less. And for 4,500 machine hours, what is the amount of under absorbed overhead into 4,500? 5,000 is the under absorbed overhead in the scenario, which can also calculated like actual production overhead incurred minus absorbed. And absorbed is always done on the basis of the standard rate. Standard formula I'm going to write here. Standard OAR per machine hour into actual machine hours, right? Into actual machine hours is how the absorbed overhead is calculated. So it's going to be standard OAR into actual machine hours into 4,500. So actual production overhead was 50,000, but here I absorbed less. I absorbed less, which is basically 45,000. So such a situation has led to an under-absorbed overheads of 5,000. So this situation leads to under-absorbed overheads. Okay, under-absorbed. And I told you I charged less. In actual, this would have been charged, and the cost should have been 5,000 more. So I need to reduce my profit because under-absorbed is my expense and it reduces my profit. Okay, and expense. This situation will lead to when budgeted machine hours are more and actual machine hours are less, actual OAR would be more than standard OAR, and the situation will lead to under-absorbed. I took a hypothetical value and actually proved it that this situation is basically leading to under-absorbed overhead, and under-absorbed is your expense. Would that lead to over-absorbed and debited to the income statement? No, and over-absorbed is an income, it's never debited, it's always credited. Will this situation where actual machine hours are more, are less than the budget, would that lead to over-absorption? No, it would lead to under-absorption. Here, this was wrong, so this is also this thing is right. Over-absorption is always credited, but this is not over-absorbed. This is wrong. So this A and B statements are wrong. Under-absorption, and it will be credited to the income statement. No, I actually charge less. So this is my expense. I actually proved it. Instead of charging 50,000, I charge 45,000, 5,000 less. Instead of charging 11.1111 per machine hour, instead of charging that cost into the product, I actually absorb cost into the product on the basis of 10 per machine hour, which is absolutely wrong. So it is not credited. Here it is wrong. So the right statement is in green. Okay, that's how you would be tested in your exam. Or if it was the other way around, it could ask you, let me create a scenario. Okay, I'm going to write standard OAR per labor hour. For example, if absorption basis is labor hours, so the formula would be total budgeted production overhead divided by total budgeted labor hours, right? Okay, and how is actual OAR calculated? Actual overhead absorption rate is actual production overhead divided by actual labor hours. That we will come to at the end of the period, not before the period. So before the period, we're just absorbing on the basis of the standard and the predetermined and the estimated rate. And in the end, when we will come to know whether we have charged more or less, we can actually make the adjustment in the profit statement, right? That's the concept of absorption costing. Always use the standard rate, not the actual rate. Okay? So, hence the word absorption. Absorption is basically estimated rate, right? Estimated. So, for example, if actual labor hours were more than the budgeted labor hours, what would that situation lead to? Underabsorbed, underabsorbed and debited to income statement, or overabsorbed and credited to income statement. Accounting entries is right, but I need to know whether the situation would actually need to under or over. I need to choose one option out of these. Okay, so if actual hours are more, what would happen to the actual rate? Actual rate would be lower. Actual rate would be lower. If actual rate is lower, then the standard OR would be higher. Standard OR would be higher, because if actual labor hours are more, it is more than the budgeted labor hours. Budgeted labor hours are less. Budgeted labor hours are less. Standard OR would be more than the actual OR. And if standard OR is more, we are over absorbing. What? So easy to identify. It's so easy to identify. If actual labor hours are more, actual OR it would be less than the standard OR. And standard OR, if actual labor hours are more, that means budgeted labor hours are less. If budgeted labor hours are less, standard OR would be more. If standard OR is more, I am absorbing more than the actual overheads. So I would either decrease the cost or just, so over absorbed is my income, or just increase my profit as a correction. Let me take the example. Okay, I was absorbing on the basis of 10 per unit. Here I told you, let's suppose actual fixed overhead was 50,000, but here actual labor hours were 55, more than the budgeted, more than budgeted. That means budgeted are less. So what do you think would happen to the actual OAR? 50,000 divided by 5,500. If actual labor hours are more, actual OAR would be less. Yes, it is 9.09, 9.09. So here I am over absorbing. Here I'm over absorbing on every unit. I'm charging on every unit minus 10. I'm charging 0.9 more. So for actual 5,500 units, I'm actually charging 5,000 more. This will lead to 5,000 over absorbed, or the other way around. Just apply the formula. See here in the cloud, actual production overhead incurred are 50,000, but I absorbed on the basis of the standard rate of 10. However, the actual rate was 9.09. Sorry about per unit, it's per labor hour. Okay. So I absorbed, absorption is, I told you, standard OAR per labor hour into actual labor hours would be the formula. Standard is always set for the actual. So I absorbed as per 10 per labor hour. And for actual 5,500, I actually absorbed 55,000. So that has led to, absorbed is more than it's over absorbed. If either rate is more or total absorbed is more, that means it's over absorbed, and over absorbed is your income. Income increases your profit, and income is credited to income statement. So which is the right answer? 2 in this case. The situation will lead to over absorb of 5,000. Okay, so it's so easy to identify. When the actual, when there's some values given, you have to solve it, and you have, and in one of the option, the right answer you need to pick, absorb by 5,000 or 8,000, under absorb and over absorb, something like that. However, if just a general statement like the question we did earlier, just a general statement like this is given, then either you just use your mind and quickly work out the answer, or if you're confused, you can take hypothetical values and then solve your answer. Both ways, you'll be able to get valuable 2 marks. Yeah, difference between pass and fail. Okay, it's very important. And at times you are required a question like that is given to you in the question where certain data about certain budgeted data on one hand and on actual data on the other hand. And you're actually required to calculate the difference. That is the variance. Under overhead is basically the variance. Okay. And for example, a company uses an overhead absorption rate of 6 per labor hour. Always know the absorption rate is basically the standard overhead. Okay, standard overhead based on 48,000 budgeted labor hours for the period. Okay, so we are given the budgeted. In the budgeted data, we are given the standard OAR, which is 6 per labor hour, and we are also given the budgeted hours, right? In the budgeted data, we are also given the hours. And the budgeted hours are 48,000. Okay. Actual overhead expenditure incurred. Here in actual data, we are given the actual overhead incurred. We know that for under and over absorption, okay, whenever question of under and over absorption is given to you, just quickly write this formula. Before reading the question, quickly write this formula. And basically you need all these figures. Just write this formula. Check the absorption base. I just checked. It is the labor hours. So just write the formula for absorbed overhead. Write the formula for absorbed overhead as well. Standard OAR per labor hour into actual labor hours. Into actual labor hours. So whenever you see a question like that is there, which you are required to calculate either under or over absorbed, just quickly write the formula before doing everything else. Just quickly write the formula. Actual overhead incurred, less absorbed overhead, and just check the absorption base. And then also open up the formula for absorbed overhead. Just write and write it there. And then see what you're given. Here you're given the rate. Okay. See, you're given actual overhead incurred. Just write the values. Just punch in the figures now. 294250. Standard rate is 6. And 21,500 units were produced, taking 46,250 labor hours. You're also given the actual labor hours. Don't you think? I have all the data required to now calculate the absorbed overhead and then compare with actual overhead to get whether it was under or over. The question gives you a hint that it is under, since all the values are under. So basically here we need to identify what was the amount of under absorbed overhead. And I can most probably do that now since I know standard overhead absorption rate I absorb on the basis of 6 per labor hour. So for actual labor hours of 46,250, I actually absorb more or less. I absorb less. Yes, that's why it's under. 277,500. Now what is the amount? So easy to calculate now. So easy. 294250. I don't know why students struggle with these kind of questions. Look, I got my answer in like few seconds. 16. Just focus. Focus. Remember that Jackie Chan movie? Pardon me for that. Remember that Karate Kid? Just focus. Just focus. And here's your answer. 16750. That's your right answer. Okay. If you want to know, I absorbed on the basis of 6, actually charged less. What was the actual rate? That was the standard rate, right? 6. Actual would have been more. That's why it's under absorbed. Now calculate the actual rate. Actual overhead 294,250 divided by actual labor hours 46250. So the Rate was actually more than this. Rate was actually more than this. 294250 divided by 46250. Yeah, 6.36. That's why it's under. That's why. That's why it's under. 6.36 minus 6 per unit. I absorbed this amount less. So for 46250, I actually absorbed 16750 less. And at times question come like this. Fill in the blank on number into question. Here the budgeted data is given, and here on one side the actual data is given. Okay, and you're also told, even if it's not told, we know the machine hours are given and the budgeted overheads are given. So we know that overheads are absorbed on the basis of the machine hours. Because for absorption, number one thing, always remember, number one thing, you need to know the absorption base, right? Once you know the absorption base, it's actually rule of three. Once you know the absorption base, next you calculate this standard OER on the basis of that very base. Here it is absorbed on the basis of machine hours. Okay, and rule of three, since I told you it's a rule of three, and in the third place you actually get to calculate your absorbed overhead. Okay, as per the base that individual product is consuming, the actual base. Okay, here we need to calculate the under over absorbed, whether it's under or over absorbed. Okay, so I told you, whenever a question like that comes to you, first of all, before even reading the question, just write the formula. Just write the formula. Check the base. Base was machine hour. Check the base was machine hour. Check the base was machine hour. Just write the formula. Just write the formula. Actual production overhead incurred minus absorbed overhead, and just open up this formula. Depending upon that base, make it specific, like standard overhead absorption rate per machine hour. Standard is always set for actual into actual machine hours. Actual machine hours will give you the absorbed overhead, and then you're going to get a figure whether it's under or over absorbed. If it would be a positive value, okay. Oh, forget about positive value. Yeah. That is you're concerned when you're adjusting the under over absorbed in the profit statement. Okay. Actual production overhead. Actual production overhead is basically 120,000, right? Standard OER. Do you have the standard OER? Standard OER. Remember the formula. Second step. Once you know the absorption base, now second step. Standard OER per machine hour. What would be the formula? Total budgeted production overhead. At times you're given the standard OER as is, but at times you're not given. Don't worry. Total budgeted production overhead divided by total budgeted machine hours is what, how you will get standard OER per machine hour, and you are given both the values. Yeah, so simple. 1 lakh is the budgeted production overhead. Budgeted machine hours are 10,000. You're gonna get the rate, and rate is 10 per machine hour, right? Once you get the rate, do you have the third place for absorbed overhead? It's actually standard OAR per machine hour into actual machine hours. So for that you need actual machine hours. So don't worry for absorbed overhead at the first place. Remember rule of three. First you know the absorption base. Next you need to calculate the rate. Once you have the rate, look for the actual activity level, actual machine hours. Yeah, that's also given. That's also given. And now your answer is solved. 9,000 into 10. 10 per machine hour I absorbed, and for 9,000 machine hours, I actually absorbed 90,000. I actually absorbed 90,000. Okay, so it's again under absorbed. It's again under absorbed. Under absorbed by 30,000. 30,000. Under absorbed 30,000. Okay. Let's make change to this figure, the actual overhead. Now the actual overheads are 50,000. For example, the actual overheads are 50,000. Rest is same. Now the actual overheads were 50,000. Actual labor hours were 9,000. Okay. And now calculate under over absorbed. Is it under or over? Now it's over. Now it's over absorbed. Now it's over absorbed. Okay. I absorbed 90,000 by actual was 50,000. Actually over absorbed by 40,000. Now in this case, I over absorbed by 40,000. How I over absorbed? The rate, standard rate was 10, right? Standard rate was 10. Now calculate the actual rate. 50,000 divided by 9,000. 50,000 divided by 9,000. See, actual rate was this per machine hour. I actually absorbed more. So it's on per unit basis, I actually absorbed this amount more, and for actual 9,000 hours, I actually absorbed 40,000 more. So that's the over absorb. Credited to the income statement. So that's how you're going to do the question, right? And consider this question. You could be asked a bit trickier question like this, in which you would be requiring to do a bit of the a bit working back kind of a thing, right? How you going to work back to your answer? Okay, you're given the budgeted direct labor hours, right? And you're given, at times you are calculating under absorb, but see here it is given. Remember the formulas. From here, I got to know that direct labor hours are used to absorb overheads. Okay, budgeted overheads are given to me. Actual overhead is also given to me. Actual labor hours are also given to me. Can't I find budgeted direct labor hours? And there are 4 options. Yeah. I can really do that. Okay. Remember I told you, just write this formula right in front of me and just open it up. Open it up. Here, labor hours, right? Standard OAR per labor hour into actual labor hours. Okay, got it. We're not given the absorbed overhead, but here you are given the actual overheads, right? And start putting the figures you have. 74960. Okay, I am given the actual direct labor hours, right, which is 3670, and I'm also given under absorbed overheads. The situation is where we absorb less and the actual rate is more, right? Actually absorb less. So it's an expense. 3762. I actually absorbed 3762 less. So what do you think I would have absorbed? If my actual was more, I absorbed less and I absorbed this amount less. So can't I calculate my absorbed overhead like this? Yes, I can do that. How? Just deduct this figure from this figure. You're going to get your absorbed overhead, no? 74960. I actually absorbed 3762 less. So what would I have absorbed? 71198. Okay. Now, what I need to calculate? Standard OAR? No. I don't need to calculate standard OAR. Actually need to calculate budgeted labor hours. How I'm going to get that? How? Can you open up this formula now? This formula, since the other figures have been punched in right. Now, can you open up this formula? Yeah. This is going to give me the budgeted direct labor hours I was looking for. No? Just open up this formula. The absorption basis is labor hours. So this formula, just write a specific formula, right? Standard OAR. See, standard OAR per labor hour. It's total budgeted production overhead divided by total budgeted labor hours. And I am given, I actually have my absorbed overhead 71198, and I also have actual labor hours, right? So given I have absorbed overhead and I have actual labor hours, can't I calculate my standard OAR? Why not? Why not? I can actually divide my absorbed overhead with 3670 and I can get my standard OAR. So once I have my standard OAR, I can then only calculate my budgeted production budgeted labor hours. Since budgeted production overhead is given in the question, which is 73820, and I need to calculate that, but for that I need to have this value. Okay, if two figures are given, then I can calculate the third figure. But if both are not given, I cannot calculate that. So for that, I can easily get my standard OAR from here. Just divide this figure by this and you're going to get your standard OAR. 71198, just divide it with actual labor hours 3670, and here you got your 19.4. 19.4 is your standard OAR per labor hour. Now, can you calculate your budgeted labor hours? Yes, now I can do that. Now I can do that. Bring X, it's dividing, bring X over there, and standard OAR, let's take it there. Okay? Or I'm doing it here. Okay? So here, it is 19.4 is equal to total budgeted production overhead, which is 73820, and this is X, and I need to calculate that X. So what I can do, I can switch its places. It's going to be 19.5 for X. If it's dividing, it's going to be multiplied on the other side. 73820 and X. Now I can solve the X. It's multiplying. Take it on the other side. It's going to be divided by this value, and you're going to get your budgeted labor hours, 19. So that's the workout kind of thing I was talking about. At times you are required to calculate either standard rate, at times you're required to calculate actual labor hours. Any of the figure can be asked to be calculated in your exam. Divided by 19.4, 3805. That's the right answer, 3805. Now, if I get to calculate my standard OAR, just to check whether it is right, budgeted production overhead, it is budgeted production overhead divided by budgeted labor hours, 3805. Does that give the value of 19.4? Just to check. 73820 divided by 3805. Yeah, that is 19.4. Okay, so 19.4 was standard rate, and actual labor hours were 3670. Absorbed overhead was 71200. Yeah, little rounding difference. And actual overheads were 74960. And you actually under absorbed by this amount. Little rounding difference. So, okay. So at times you are required to work back your answer. Okay. Okay. Here's this question, though it doesn't relate to it, but let's discuss it. Okay. What weight of raw material is required to produce 20 batches of product? When required to produce, it is basically the input quantity. That is basically your budgeted input quantity. And remember, budgeted input always has that's the input quantity based upon 100%. And after that, the loss, as in this case, the loss is 10%. So I need to calculate the budgeted figure that actually already has the allowance for normal loss. My budgeted quantity always have the allowance for normal loss. Okay. If you take a cloth and turn it into a shirt, okay, and you take, for example, take 3 meter cloth, and actually your shirt requires 2.5 meters to turn it into a shirt, okay. But what you're going to take, you're going to take a 3 meter cloth for a shirt. That's the input quantity. And what is the loss? Meanwhile, in the cutting and all that, that is the 0.5 is the loss. And 0.5 is what percentage of 3. Loss is always a percentage of your input quantity because the input is 100%. So 0.5 divided by 3 into 100. So in this case, 16.67 is your loss. Okay, and what is converted into a shirt? That is after this loss of 16.67 and 83.33 is 2.5 meters percentage of 3. 5 divided by 3 into 100. That is what actually gets converted, right? So your required quantity is basically always your input quantity. And see, 100 units of a product are produced in a batch. In a batch, 100 units are produced, okay? So in one batch, 100 units are produced, and each finished unit of a product contains 0.54. Okay, each finished shirt contains 2.5 meter, but that's actually after the loss, 83.3. So what do you think? What do you think? Is that what was input to get that one finished unit? No, it wasn't what the input. Actually, input was, this is actually 90% because 10% is the loss. So this particular thing is basically 90%. Okay. So when I want to calculate the 100% of the weight that is required to produce 20 batches, okay, in one batch, 100 units are produced, and for 20 batches, what is the required material input? That's what you need to calculate. And each finished unit contains 0.54. Okay, that's what actual finished unit contains, 0.54. So it is going to be 90%. Since it is after loss, output is after loss, right? Just like in this case. And what I want, if I want input back, this is going to be 2.5 is going to be 83%, right? If I want 3 meter, 2.5 is 83.33. If I want 3 meters, the input, what I'm going to do, I'm just going to multiply it with 100%. So I'm just going to gross it up. 2.5 divided by 83.33. This is 83.33 and I want 100%. So 100% is basically 3 meters. So here as well, 0.54 is 90%. It is after loss of 10%. That's my output. And what if I want 100% of this figure? What would that be? It would again be like this. 0.54 100 into 100 is a cross multiply into 90x. So x is going to be basically 0.54 is 90% and what I want is 100. In one shirt, what is the input quantity? That's what I want to calculate. 0.54 is 90%, right? And I want 100%. In one finished unit, it is 0.6, which is input. So input is 0.6 and then output is 0.4. And meanwhile, this is the loss. The difference is basically the amount of loss. 0.54 minus 0.6. That's the loss of 0.06. That's the loss. And the output of finished good contains 0.54. Okay. So that's the loss. And that loss is what percentage of 0.6? And that makes 10%, right? That's what it was given in the question. So normal loss was 10%, 100 was the input quantity, and this is 90%. 0.54 is 90%. So I actually got the 100%, right? I actually got the 100%. If one unit takes 0.6, so one batch that contains 100 units would actually require how much quantity? How much quantity, input quantity? 0.6 into 100 That's what is required. 60 kg is required per batch of 100 units. But here you are required to calculate the quantity required to produce the input quantity, the 100% figure, required to produce 20 batches. And if in one batch containing 100 units, so in 20 batches, meaning 200 units, what is going to be the total quantity? So 60 kg in one batch, or just multiplied with 2, sorry, that's 60 kg per 100 units, right? Yeah, exactly. 60 kg is what is required for 60 kg is required per batch, okay, per batch. And now you require for 20 batches, right? So 60 kg is required for one batch. Now I need quantity required for 20 batches. So simply multiply 60 into, not with 2 but with 20, since you require for 20 batches. 60 into 20, that is 1200. That's the right answer. So that's it from today. Thank you very much.